The 35mm print looked fantastic.
Did it?
Yeah, it looked really, really good.
Phew.
How hard was it to get that right? Was there a lot of angst involved in it?
Yeah, we did. I don't know. I don't quite know the ins and outs of it, but we've screened it. I've seen bits of it several times, but I haven't seen the whole thing all the way through. From what I can remember, a test was done and it was fine, but then there's a slight problem with the projection of it, which we thought was a problem with the print, but it wasn't. The print was fine, and then we tried it again, and then Doug here at the BFI looked at it and said, "Yeah, it's absolutely fine." But it's all that joy of 35mm, you know, with a digital print, it either plays or it doesn't play. But with a 35mm, you can sort of tweak it, and you know, it's the art of the projectionist. So I just want to say, yeah, thanks to, I think it's Steve projecting, so thanks, Steve. I just happened to meet Steve last week. I don't know all the projectionists by
You're not on first name terms with all of them. So we will take some questions from the audience, but just as a sort of watching it again now, and I'm struck by how much it's a film that the more you watch it, the more you get from it. I can't believe that I hadn't made the yellow and red in the flower connection until just now. I mean, that's what I mean about having. So do you have the sense that it is something that needs to be watched and rewatched, or did you design it that way?
Well, as an audience member, I think all the best films you just watch and watch and watch. You know, my favourite films, I just watch them over and over again, and they change because you bring yourself to the films, don't you? And you project yourself onto the films, so, and they change as you change. So I would hope that it's a film that people want to revisit. I mean, commercially, it's helpful.
It worked for Titanic, apparently.
So if everybody comes and sees it twice, and simple maths is we double the box office, which makes making the next one easier. But I think so. And I learn things about the film from other people watching it and telling me about it. You know, I spoke to somebody yesterday from 14 Times,
Which is a great publication.
It is, as we were saying. You know, it's 14. I've got a really strong relationship with 14 Times, not just because it was such a brilliant magazine that is all concerned with conspiracy theories back when conspiracy theories were fun rather than like world-endingly dangerous. but also the producer of Bait, God, I'm going to try and talk about this without having a meltdown here, but the original producer of Bait passed away while we were trying to get the film made, and she was a subscriber to 14 Times, and I don't know why I decided this is a good idea to tell. Do you know, right, I might have mentioned that Bait won a BAFTA, right? When I walked up to get the BAFTA, on the way up, I thought, don't talk about Loz, because you're not going to be able to get through it if you try and talk about it. Now I've decided this is a good time to try and talk about it. Sure. But anyway, I'm going to, 14 Times, she was a subscriber to 14 Times, and so when Jill, who is the publicist from the BFI, said, 14 Times want to do an interview, I just said, yes, this is, you know, for Loz. Bob Fisher interviewed me, and he told me what he thought the film was about, and it was like he was talking about Loz, and it was just like, you know, hairs on the back of the neck. And that was somebody telling me what they thought the film was about. So in a protracted answer to your question, I think, yeah, please go and see it more than once.
Mary, did you have discussions about what things meant in order to do the performance, or did you interpret it for yourself?
A bit of both, really, but sometimes I'd ask what things meant, and Mark wasn't forthcoming.
Because I hadn't spoken to Bob Fisher then.
You didn't know. And that was fine. Sometimes it was okay, and sometimes I really needed to know, and sometimes he'd just go, you need to work that out for yourself. So it's not only enigmatic to watch, but it was actually quite enigmatic being in it as well.
I said when I saw it the first time that, I mean, obviously there are things, you know, there is Nick Rogue in there, and there's Don't Look Now, and And I said to you, it's Haunting of Hill House, which is one of my favourite novels, of all time. And I meant that as a compliment, because Haunting of Hill House is kind of an archetype about people haunting themselves. But I also realised that that's a very reductive thing to say, because so much of it, and actually seeing it now just projected, so much of it is about the relationship between land and sea. And oddly, watching it reminded me of being in Shetland, where I am every year, where one of the first things I was astonished to discover was people didn't learn to swim in Shetland, because if you went down in a boat, you didn't want to swim. And there's that thing when you're surrounded by sea, but you're in this kind of... And that tension, I think, really came through seeing it projected here. Is that as crucial to you as it is to me at the moment?
Yeah, I think there's a perception that, especially where we're from in Cornwall, that the sea is like a leisure resource that you engage with to relax, whereas a lot of it's simplifying the equation, but a lot of the local people traditionally who would have earned a living from the sea, it's their workplace, and it's also a workplace that can kill you, and very often did kill people. So it wasn't somewhere where you went for your leisure. So I think, and this film dates from a time where that's probably still the case. I think that there would have been a temptation to have Mary's character to be sort of like living on this island, so she would be like a wild swimmer, or as we used to call it, a swimmer. But she would be, she would see the sea as something that was something to kind of a lifeline, because the boatman came across the sea, but also something that is dangerous and needs to be respected. And if you don't fully understand it, then don't engage with it.
Mary, what is it like tramping across that landscape? Because it's treacherous ground.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of acting through physicality rather than, there was a joke at the beginning when Mark said, he said, I don't want to say much. He said, like in the film. It's a very physical film, and therefore a lot of it is to do with the way you walk across landscape.
Yeah, and that's really hard, because well, it's not hard to walk across landscape, but
to do it well.
But suddenly it's that weird thing of not being too self-conscious and just trying to just literally walk and feel natural and normal, and that like just walking, whereas you feel you have to let go of the fact that it's being scrutinized, that people might scrutinize it when you're doing it, but it's just a pleasure. It's just walking around, and it was March when we were filming, so it was cold, and we didn't have a drop of rain, which Mark can tell you about. So it was dry the whole time, but it was pretty cold and it was pretty windy. And it's just exhilarating and brilliant, really.
Did you sink yourself into the role? I mean, did you find yourself inhabiting the role?
I used to get home and just carry on walking.
just used to walk home.
Walk upstairs, walk down.
I think, I was talking about this earlier on, I do think, weirdly, because we'd come out of lockdown, that isolation that we'd all felt did really feed into the character of just feeling like you have to be self-sufficient and you need to just rely on yourself or the people close to you, and she obviously doesn't have people close to her, which is why when the boatman does arrive, that the scene where he comes and he eats buns and she's just standing drinking tea, I feel like at that point I was literally trying to absorb him as another human being that was in the same room, because I think even if you're an introvert who doesn't necessarily draw energy from other people, we all have our limits, and there are points where you just think, I think I'll go to the shop and maybe I need to just sort of say hello to somebody. And I think for her as well, that sense of isolation, but then she might be introverted and very self-contained and very happy to be on her own, but actually still needing human contact. And we'd all just lived through that, hadn't we?
That was the paradox, really, was trying to portray isolation. And people have said, it must have been really easy to make a film about isolation, having just come out of lockdown. But actually, behind the camera is and at meal breaks and stuff, is a bunch of people who haven't socialised for a year. So we were just having a whale of a time whilst trying to portray this sort of
Desolation.
that we'd all been trying to forget. You know, we were sort of the first time we'd been mixing together. So it was a paradox, really.
Was the book always in the script?
The book was there was always a book. It was going to be various different books, and
So why that one?
because I just thought I'll Google what book about the environment was out in 1973, and it so happened that Blueprint for Survival was published in 72, 73, and
That's too neat a coincidence.
and it's thought of as being the first book. It's a sort of anthology of academic papers, really. But I started off being really thinking I was really clever, and I'll put, the book will be a little in joke or something. And in the end, I thought it'd just be nice to have. And when I saw the design on the front, it's so bold and so stark. I thought a blueprint for survival. Just have that, in a close up with her reading it. It was too good to be true, really.
Before we throw this to the audience, Mary the Dancing, a remarkable moment. What were you told to do?
Oh, I love dancing. So that was really easy, but there's a brilliant little bit on that the first assistant was making sort of little tiny films every day and then putting that out for everybody to see what we'd shot and stuff. And there's one brilliant bit where me and Ed are doing the disco dancing and we're just smiling our heads off and having a brilliant time, and all you can hear is Mark. Actually, isn't you shouting, is it?
I say it. I'm operating the camera.
And you said, Colin?
I think I said it under my breath. I was just going, blank faces, blank faces.
Faces, suddenly.
Colin's next to me.
And he's going, blank faces, blank faces. And we were all dancing and we had to sort of stop smiling and enjoying it. And
it was one of those moments, I know that you've talked about it before, you said if it feels like people on screen had a good time when they were making it, then probably the audience won't have a good time watching it. So I think it was one of those moments where I didn't want it to feel like...
Except for the fact that it's so fleeting. It's like it's given to you and then snatched away so fast that you're kind of, and it's because it's, as I said, so much of the performance is physical. And I love dance. Anyway, I don't understand dance. I can't dance. I'm the world's worst dancer. And I love watching dance on screen. And it's just a fleeting moment. But I think it's really important because if it's not there, there's some magic essence that isn't in the film. And last thing, the music, I know we spoke about this before, but the scene in which you're singing along to the Bristol Christ, apparently you're not singing along to it. Apparently that's done afterwards in the edit.
Yeah.
But it's perfect because you do sing that one word.
Just that one refrain, river. It's just one word.
That's not what you're saying. Because I didn't know that track was going to play on that scene. I didn't even think there was going to be music playing. And what it is
what did I say then?
I think you're talking to me. You say something like "okay" or something because I think you think it's maybe cut or something. This whole film wasn't just an accident. This is just like one
like
example where I had some rushes where your mouth was moving, and I think it's the first time you speak in the film, and it was just like a nice little moment. To sort of hear your voice in the room.
Right, okay.
But by the magic of cinema, even you think that...
Even I think that I was singing River.
No, because I put that song on because I was playing it on record in my studio whilst I was doing the silent cut, and I thought this would be great to get Brenda Wotton's voice in the film. And so all I did was open a microphone on the desk while the record was playing, and it just played out of my speakers in the room, and I just captured that bit. And it was so easy. And then Denzel, the producer here, then had to spend about 6 months trying to track down who owned the publishing, the licensing, the copyright. Because it's a Charles Causley poem arranged by John Gendel, sung by Brenda Wotton, recorded by so-and-so, sold to so-and-so. And so I thought, it's brilliant. I'll just play it in the studio, put it on the film, no problem. And then months later, I find out that Denzel's been spending like 7 days a week trying to find out who owns the copyright.
And again, it is absolutely perfect. You can't imagine another piece of music. And I remember you said to me that you can barely bear to listen to it without crying because it just pierces your heart, doesn't it?
It's just the words are so beautiful, and I've no idea what they mean, but the way she sings them, and the way the the way the 4 lanes male voice choir comes in, and they sound like the sea. They sound like a wave. She sounds like a bird, and the male voice choir sound like the sea. And a lot of those recordings were done in our village, in the old primary school, which got turned into a recording studio. Sentinel Records, who were in old Paul village school, and they just, it's recorded with one microphone and people moving closer and further away from microphones and stuff, and it's just all there. It's just baked into this incredible recording, which I'm just so glad Denzel managed to find out who owned the copyright. And it's weird because the circle is complete, because Georgia Ellery, who is one half of Jockstrap and Black Country New Road, who played
Katie
in Bait, she is from the Brenda Wooten family. It's her sort of great, I think it's her great auntie. So it was George's auntie, who I think, Denzel's here, he'll probably know more, but I think she was the key to unlocking the mystery of who the hell owns that song.
That is a question from a man wearing a Jaws t-shirt. So that's a very specific editing question.
It's a bit of both. I suppose I'm writing something at the moment, and I'm trying not to write the script in the way that I know the film will look, because I don't want to write the script non-linear, because then if the script's non-linear, and then I end up going and taking my non-linear approach to editing, then I don't know where well, maybe I'll have a completely linear film. I don't know.
double negative.
Yeah, double negative, and it will. But so I try and write the script as straight as possible. So like the Bait script, for example, just reads like an hour and a half long episode of EastEnders by the Sea, and then it's the form that messes with it and the linearity of it. So I tried to write this quite straight. But the thing is, I don't shoot enough footage. I don't shoot any coverage, which leaves big problems in the edit. But all of those problems can be solved by cutting elsewhere and breaking the linearity of it. So, yeah, most of it comes in the edit. The film is made in the edit for me. I've got this amazing material to work with, and all of the collaborations are really key, but once I'm in the edit, through my own shortcomings from the process, I'm left with gaps that forces me to be more abstract with the edit. Robert Bresson's L'Argent is a direct rip-off. Homage. I was influenced to a high degree by Robert Bresson. There's a short.
You're nodding your head towards it.
Yes,
yeah.
It's the beginning of L'Argent is a head-on view of a. You'll know this. Everybody will know this. It's the greatest
Maybe
film ever made. It's a head-on view of a cash dispenser, and I just loved the opening of that film. So I thought, how can I rip homage that? How can I tip my hat to that? So, but the radio was always key, and it had something. Is it called a hot start? Do you have in a horror film? You have something that's a bit unnerving at the beginning.
I haven't heard that phrase, but it sounds good.
No, I hadn't heard it until somebody saw the rough cut and told me
that's a hot
start. It was a hot start, and since then I've pretended to. I thought you would have heard of it. If I've pretended to know what it was, maybe he was winding me up. But there was Mary's character's sort of distress call played out of the radio at the beginning of the film, and then you gradually realise it was her distress call that was looping back. And this guy, Brett, good friend of mine, who directed Long Way Back.
Yeah, which is a great film. Said
to me, that's a hot start. And I said, yeah, I know. And he said, you don't need a hot start. I said, yeah, I thought I didn't. So I took it out. But that was what the radio was all about, really, was this. It could be an exposition device. It's almost like a voiceover. If I wanted to put more exposition in, I could always put a voice on the radio.
Also, it establishes seance, time shift, all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. John largely cast himself in the film.
He did, he did actually, yeah.
John, can I say that he thinks that he's not going to work again?
Yeah. Well, he was 91 when we shot it.
Yeah, he was 91. And so I said it would be amazing to have John in the film because he's John Woodvine. So I was at a film festival in Belgium, and you were at your dad's house, and I remember stood on this bridge in Belgium, remember it so clearly, ringing Mary and saying, I've got a part for your dad in the film. And Mary said, Dad, there's a part for you in the film. And he was like, great. And I said, it'd be brilliant. It's pretty simple, playing a priest, no dialogue. And he said, no, I want dialogue. I said, okay, well, I'll write a line. Oh, no, I want more than one line. Okay, well, we'll write 2 lines. And he said, no, I want more than that. And I went, a song? And he was up for that.
Yeah,
so.
he was up for the song.
And it was going to be a congregation singing. That scene was going to be 100, 200 extras in it. And then we had a pandemic, which ruled out scenes like that. So it really did become his moment. But he's brilliant. I hate the last day of the shoot because everybody starts relaxing and having fun, which is really difficult because on the last day of the shoot, for me, I'm thinking, well, we haven't got enough footage. The film's fucked. Maybe I can edit this into an abstract piece that will go in a gallery somewhere. And everybody else is like celebrating and having fun. And so we scheduled John to be there for the last day. And it was because we had to wait for his second jab and his immunity to, it's really personal stuff. But his immunity had to be at the highest from the second jab before he came down. So we scheduled him for the last day of the shoot. And it was brilliant because nobody mucked about because John Woodvine was turning up. So everybody was really focused and really serious. And so, yeah, if you're ever making a film, just cast a really well-respected British character actor in their 90s for the last day of the shoot, and you'll get the last day. Yeah, a big influence. I first saw The Signalman about the same time that my dad took me to visit a derelict railway tunnel in North Cornwall. Quite a day. There used to be a railway line that ran directly from Waterloo to Padstow, and that was scrapped in the 60s, made famous by bitumen, because that's how we used to get to Cornwall. It was scrapped in the 60s, and most of the infrastructure disappeared, but this half-mile-long tunnel in North Cornwall remained, and my dad took me to see it, and you have to wander through farmland and everything. And I had it in my head that was where The Signalman had been filmed, which it wasn't. It was filmed in Chippenham. But then years later, I was hanging around with some people in North Cornwall, friends of mine, and my friend Poppy, she started talking about a film her dad had made, which was The Signalman. And I thought, oh yeah, your surname's Gordon Clark. It's your dad, Lawrence Gordon Clark. And it turned out, yeah, he lived, I won't give his address, but he lived in North Cornwall, not too far away from the tunnel. So it became, yeah, again, the circle was complete with that one. I actually spoke to her this morning and said, I'm going to probably end up chatting about your dad tonight at the BFI. And 3 of his films are on in January as part of the DNA season. Yeah, the film is a derelict house out on the moorland, which I'd actually shot part of a film there before when it was empty. It was not habited, but it was in quite a good state. And then the landscape takes these things back, like is alluded to in the film. You know, the human footprint disappears pretty quickly. So we went back to the house, and trees had grown up all around it, and you couldn't really see it. And I went there with Joe Gray, who's one of the production designers, with a machete and sort of hacked away and really found the house again. And then Denzel went in with the structural engineers and made sure it was all safe and everything. And then we filmed the derelict scenes first, before principal photography, about a week before, and then the art department set to work patching the roof and putting the windows in and everything. But it is a shell, there's nothing inside, and
I had to wear a hard hat when I went inside.
it's a
So if you
continuity
see
nightmare.
me, yeah. So when I come out, when I hear the children singing, so I had to stand inside and then come out the front door. But I had to wear a hard hat all the time I was in there. Yeah, and it's just being held up with sort of agricramp, isn't it? All the floors being held up with.
Perfectly safe, though.
Yeah, perfectly safe.
Genuine, it is, honestly.
Yeah,
genuine.
it is perfectly safe.
Yeah. Well, I do everything post-synched, mostly because the camera I use, which is a Clockwork Bolex H16, is a non-sync camera and is a loud camera as well. But also, I can't understand recording location sound, which is terrible if there's any sound recordists in the location sound recordists in the room. But I just think when you're working on a low budget, you've got so much control if you don't record sound. These scenes of isolation, that we didn't film in isolated places. The shot of the cottage, there's a busy farm just out of frame to the left. Just to the right, there's an ancient stone called the Men and Toll, the Hold Stone, which just got a procession of people who go and have their photo taken at it. And you can frame out all of that visually, but sonically it's very difficult if you've got limited resources to get rid of that. And the sound of aeroplanes, and when you're on the more sound, you hear two people talking and you think, oh, who's that? And you turn around and they're actually 2 miles away, but the voice just travels. So I like to go into this, and I like to do the sound design myself and have complete control over the sound. So I like to start from scratch in the studio and just build from nothing rather than repairing sound. And I'm being facetious saying I don't understand why people don't record, why people record location sound, because obviously it's the most sensible way to do it. But especially if you've got very little dialogue and you want to create a lot of the atmosphere through the sound. And then a lot of the sound's created in the studio. I do a lot of the Foley in the studio, and where I do the picture edit, I've got my music, I've got an old synthesizer, and I've got different mics that I use. I stand on a square bit of floorboard, which is above the floor in the studio, so I can do footsteps and all of that kind of stuff. A lot of it gets replaced with better Foley work later on, but so that I can get the rhythm of the edit to work, I do all of that. And I run everything. I built a 1/4-inch tape loop in the studio using 2 reel-to-reel machines, so most of it goes through a tape loop. And the more abstract stuff has gone round and round the tape loop and started to fall to pieces. And the cleaner stuff has probably just gone round once. So I love tape as much as I love film.
Thank you ever so much, everybody, for coming. Thanks for all your questions. Please join me in thanking Mark and Mary and our projectionist and the BFI for putting this on. I think the film is astonishing, and I wish you every success with it. I hope it is one of the most remembered films of next year when it opens in January. Please tell your friends, come and see it.
Twice.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.